some kid who has a boyfriend who's a furry, and you talk to him on Discord. I think he's a furry. I don't want to disrespect.
I don't know if that's a real thing.
His boyfriend's definitely a guy who became a girl.
And wears furry stuff.
I think they do furry or furry games, excuse me. My apologies.
Katt Williams is not whispering anymore. He is standing in the middle of a cultural storm with something he calls a forbidden list, a ledger of names, power brokers, and entertainers that he insists are tied to the shocking fate of Charlie Kirk. We are not talking about vague hints or half-hearted jokes. This is Katt Williams declaring that what just happened to Kirk was not random, not isolated, but the calculated outcome of forces that most people still dismiss as myth. If Katt is right, then the Illuminati are not the stuff of internet threads, but real players moving pieces in plain sight, deciding who gets silenced and who is allowed to keep speaking. And by speaking these things out loud, Katt is crossing a line very few dare to step near.
Like the more they keep looking into it, the more they're like, this doesn't feel like a real... It feels super fabricated.
But here's the thing. Just like I was talking about when people are arguing on social media, it's all part of the plan. If you want...
We must ask ourselves, why him, why now? Katt has never been afraid of controversy. His whole career is built on cutting into taboos with sharp comedy. But this moment feels different. When he first broke into national fame with roles like Money Mike and Friday After Next, audiences laughed at the wild persona, the shock of hair, the relentless energy. But what fans discovered over time was a man obsessed with more than punchlines. His specials, his interviews, his constant feuds with Hollywood insiders, they were always about pulling back a curtain. Now, after decades of hinting at hidden deals and shady allegiances, he is stepping into territory that blurs comedy with prophecy. And the moment he pointed his finger toward Charlie Kirk's violent end, we felt that sharp chill of taboo being broken.
You're telling me that this kid who's not military trained, this guy, first of all, how did he get to the roof? How come nobody was looking? How come nobody was like, there's a direct line of sight between where he's sitting and those roofs? You guys didn't check? You don't have a drone? Like, that's insane. So he's on the roof, he shoots, he jumps from the roof, he jumps down 14.
It is impossible to forget Joe Rogan's stunned reaction when the news first reached him mid-podcast. Cameras caught his face folding into disbelief as his guest sat frozen. So this just happened. We just found out that Charlie Kirk got shot, Rogan muttered, eyes darting off camera, looking like someone had just told him the rules of reality had changed. That clip went viral, not because of what was said, but because of what wasn't. Silence, shock, unease. Was this the voice of a man processing the unthinkable in real time? Or was this the mask of someone who already knew how deep this story goes, carefully weighing every word? We cannot ignore the tension that his hesitation unleashed. His follow-up remarks, "It's so scary, it's so dangerous," only deepened the paranoia, as though he was warning us without daring to name names. And that brings us straight into the whispers circling online, the so-called hidden guest list. This is where Katt's accusations become more than personal vendettas. According to those who claim to have glimpsed pieces of it, the names do not stop at politicians. They stretch across Hollywood studios, comedy circuits, and music industry boardrooms. The story goes that Charlie Kirk had once dined at gatherings that insiders called Illuminati dinners, closed-door affairs where alliances were made and allegiances tested. These were not official functions, of course. They were the kind of off-the-books encounters where no cameras were allowed, but everyone left with a deeper sense of who truly holds the levers. If even half of Katt's alleged list is real, then the people laughing on stage today might be the same ones raising toasts behind curtains, deciding fates.
When people are against the Illuminati, then they get punched in the face all the time. The press hates them, and nobody likes them.
To understand how Katt came to carry such a list, we have to step back. He was not born into Hollywood privilege. He was raised under strict religious rules, broke free as a teenager, and learned the art of performance while sleeping on benches and traveling. After spending time in Venice and traveling with a circus. By the time he reached films like Norbit and Scary Movie, he had built a reputation as the wild card who could steal any scene. But in interviews, especially the recent 3-hour clash on Club Shay Shay, Katt painted himself as more than a comedian. He described meetings with shadowy figures, moments when careers were decided not by talent, but by compliance. He even claimed his own trajectory, alongside artists like Ludacris, was settled in rooms that sounded more like rituals than business negotiations. Ludacris brushed it off with a freestyle verse. Katt doubled down, saying he had receipts. And receipts are exactly what his fans believe he is waving now. The idea of a homicide tied to hidden elites is explosive enough, but when Katt links it to one of the most high-profile conservative voices of the era, it rips into the core of mainstream narratives. Authorities may frame Charlie Kirk's demise as the act of a lone radical, a single student radicalized online, but Katt's suggestion that Kirk was targeted for reasons larger than politics, larger than ideology, feeds into the suspicion that the official story is another stage play for the public. What if it was not about one gunman, but about sending a message to anyone who strays from the script? That is where Joe Rogan's silence takes on new meaning. Remember, Rogan is no stranger to controversy. He has built his entire empire on free speech, on calling out censorship, on inviting voices that mainstream media shuts down. Yet when the most shocking act of political violence in years unfolded right before his eyes, he paused, his hands clutched his head, his words stalled, and millions watched him almost crumble on air. Some saw it as grief, others saw it as calculation, because if he had already been warned, if he had already suspected the scale of what was happening, then perhaps his silence was not ignorance, but survival.
Or not, he's even the guy who shot him. Maybe he thought he was going to shoot him. Maybe he's a patsy. Maybe he did it.
I feel like he's a plant. Did you see the video? Did you see the person doing the investigating on his mom's Facebook?
No.
You haven't seen this? Have you seen that, Jamie? Some dude online.
His mom's got a weird Facebook. I
It's
spilled coffee.
very trippy. It doesn't make any sense.
The more we pull at the threads, the darker it gets. Charlie Kirk's passing was officially attributed to a single sniper perched on a university rooftop. But within hours, speculation spread that messages had been scrawled on the bullet casings, taunts, memes, signals of a culture war fought in the language of the internet. Authorities say the suspect's roommate was shocked and had no knowledge of the plan, but in this climate, every denial only adds fuel. Katt Williams' list emerges right as people are questioning whether the act was politically motivated, ideologically driven, or orchestrated by a force that wants us divided and distracted.
Speaking of free speech and cancellation, Jimmy Kimmel, the late night show comedian in the US, he's had a show for decades now, I think. He's been cancelled, apparently. At least his show has been paused indefinitely, and that's because of a monologue that he gave in which he tried to suggest that the shooter in the Charlie Kirk political assassination is part of the MAGA movement.
And we cannot ignore the ripple effect on Hollywood itself. Already, late-night shows are caught in the crossfire. Jimmy Kimmel's suspension after controversial remarks about Kirk only heightened the suspicion that powerful hands are controlling what can and cannot be said. Rogan himself predicted Kimmel's show would bounce back stronger, framing it as proof of how chaos can serve the system. Was that prediction-savvy media analysis or coded acknowledgement of a script already written by those who decide these outcomes? When we connect the dots, the picture is frightening. A comedian with a reputation for saying too much suddenly named names tied to a political figure cut down in front of thousands. A podcaster with unmatched influence is caught speechless, as if weighing whether to cross a line he cannot uncross. Whispers of a guest list echo through social media, suggesting that Kirk's final days were spent rubbing shoulders with people whose smiles hide sharper intentions. The mainstream insists it is random violence, but every silence, every suspension, every offhand prediction makes it feel more like choreography.
That's a threat to all of us, and we have to be clear and forthright in condemning it.
And this is only the beginning. Because if Katt Williams truly has a list, then every name on it is a potential earthquake. If confirmed, each one could topple careers, spark investigations, and shatter the illusion of business as usual in Hollywood and Washington. The internet is already hungry for names, speculating on moguls, comedians, actors, even musicians who may have sat across from Kirk in private moment. And with Rogan's strange reaction still circulating in clips across platforms, the question becomes unavoidable. Is he another player caught in the web, or a bystander realizing too late that the walls are closing in? The rumors are no longer whispers, they are threads weaving into something larger. What began as a straightforward tragedy is spiraling into a story of cover-ups, alliances, and a comedian who refuses to be silent. We are left standing on the edge of a revelation that could redraw the map of power in entertainment and politics, and the silence of certain voices may be the loudest clue of all.
If you want people to lose all faith that anyone is going to solve anything, you add a bunch of, if you're going to kill a guy, you add a bunch of other wacky shit that doesn't make any sense, and you spam it out there at the same time. You leave a gun that didn't do it out in the woods. You do a bunch of shit like that.
And then came the details that no official press release could sanitize. Bullet casings at the scene were said to carry strange inscriptions, taunts like, "Hey fascist, catch," alongside cryptic phrases echoing from internet meme culture. One casing reportedly bore the words, "Oh, Bella Ciao," a direct reference to old resistance songs, as if the shooter wanted to lace the attack with symbolism that only certain circles would understand. Even more unnerving was the sight of the assailant's outfit. Dark clothing paired with a t-shirt emblazoned with an eagle and an American flag, like a caricature of patriotism staged for maximum spectacle. To dismiss these elements as random would be naive. To those who believe in signatures left behind, this looked like the Illuminati's way of marking territory. Ritual sacrifice camouflaged as chaos. The timing could not have been sharper. Charlie Kirk had just launched his American comeback tour, billed as a triumphant return, a rallying cry for his base. And within hours of its debut, he was silenced in front of thousands, struck down on stage with cameras rolling, the screams of the audience mixing with the blare of emergency sirens. This was not a private act. This was a spectacle. It was designed to be remembered, replayed, dissected. The parallels to historical political shocks are chilling, but here it felt like an initiation rite performed in daylight, an offering made to powers that thrive on fear. We cannot help but see it as theater, a ritual dressed as tragedy, engineered to send a message that every public voice is vulnerable. And when we look back at Katt Williams' long, turbulent career, the pattern begins to make sense. For years, tabloids painted him as a self-destructive star, spiraling from one arrest to another, entangled in bizarre altercations, constantly pushed to the margins. But now, framed against his explosive allegations, those episodes look less like personal downfall and more like retribution. Every probation, every sudden disappearance, every viral video of him losing control could be interpreted as punishment for stepping too close to truths that Hollywood once buried. What if Katt wasn't falling apart? What if he was being sabotaged? Remember, Katt himself has admitted to being jailed 30 times, openly stating that if caught, he would always be armed because the alternative was worse. Those admissions were treated as comedy fodder, as evidence of instability. But what if they were survival tactics in a world where saying too much can put a target on your back? His insistence on having receipts for his claims feels less like a comedian's boast and more like the cautious record-keeping of someone who knows he might be erased at any moment. And now, after his viral Club Shay Shay interview racked up tens of millions of views, we are seeing his comeback not as luck, but as a man forcing his way back into relevance with truths too heavy to suppress.
Been funded. They pay you to not talk about things they don't want you to talk about. They tell you that themselves.
That is why his naming of the Illuminati in connection with Kirk's end hit so hard. It is the culmination of decades of whispers, finally said in plain language. Hollywood's punishment machine may have tried to bury him under arrests and canceled gigs, but here he stands, warning us with names and lists that sound more like leaks than rants. And the public is listening because his track record, no matter how chaotic, has always circled around one theme: exposing the hidden. Meanwhile, the other side of this triangle, Joe Rogan, sits in an uncomfortable spotlight. His stunned silence during the live taping spread across platforms like wildfire, but whispers now call it something else, evidence of a silent deal. The theory goes that Rogan, with his empire of millions of listeners, is too important to be allowed complete freedom. That his show, which once prided itself on unfiltered conversation, now operates under invisible constraints. His hesitations, his careful phrasing, his tendency to back away when conversations drift toward dangerous territories. Are these just caution or signs of an arrangement made to keep the public calm while insiders manage the storm?
In a way that, like, okay, you're saying something that's actually factually inaccurate,
Right.
according to the narrative. Now, let's be real clear. I don't necessarily think they know what's going on yet. There's a lot of weird going on.
In the days surrounding Kirk's shocking end, a pattern of timed disruptions unfolded across the media landscape like dominoes tipping one after another. Jimmy Kimmel's abrupt suspension came at the peak of online outrage over his comments, but its timing also neatly aligned with the chaos triggered by the attack on Kirk. Disney executives, normally quick to manage scandal, retreated into an eerie silence, withholding statements even as their flagship late-night program sat in limbo. At the same moment, Joe Rogan disappeared from the conversation, reportedly on an extended hunting trip with limited internet access. These overlapping absences created a vacuum of commentary at the exact point when audiences were hungriest for clarity. We are left to wonder whether these moves were truly coincidental or if they represent a calculated blackout, an orchestrated pause allowing decision-makers to shape the narrative before public scrutiny could harden into suspicion. Industry insiders whispered about deals in progress, regulatory approvals hanging in the balance, and the potential cost of offending powerful interests. It is as though a curtain dropped across the entertainment world just long enough to reset the stage, pulling major players out of sight until the immediate storm passed. The result was a period of near silence from the very figures who had built their brands on being unfiltered and unafraid.
Honestly, I mean, look, Jimmy Kimmel can be funny, and I don't mean to take anything away from that, but the fact of the matter, can you remember a political joke that went viral, what was something really funny of his? There was no attempt in humor at all in what he said.
This timeline of suppression, when mapped out beside the details of Kirk's public downfall, begins to look less like random turbulence and more like the opening act of a coordinated script. The simultaneous retreat of key voices, the muted response from corporations, and the sudden shifts in programming hint at a prelude to something larger, an invisible reset preparing the ground for a new narrative to emerge. It leaves US questioning what information might still be held back and whether the next revelation will be managed just as tightly, hidden behind the same velvet ropes that now seem to separate truth from spectacle. We know Rogan has always defended the right to speak freely, railing against censorship, mocking the idea that comedians are being silenced, and yet in the very moment when silence was most conspicuous, he gave us exactly that, silence. Could it be that his platform, built on challenging narratives, is now part of the same system that polices them? If even Rogan cannot say what he thinks without fear of repercussion, then who among us can? This is the chilling thought that keeps echoing as we rewatch his pause, his sharp intake of breath, his half-finished sentences.
Well, we are certainly at an inflection point, not just around political violence, but there are a host of larger trends that we have to be concerned about.
And here is where the threads converge: a comedian with a history of punishment for speaking too much, a podcaster whose silence now feels scripted, a political figure cut down in the opening act of his return, with symbols scattered like clues around the crime scene. The overlap between comedy, politics, and ritual has collapsed into one story. The walls we thought separated entertainment from power and power from violence have crumbled. What we are witnessing is not a random tragedy, but a coordinated performance meant to remind us of the stakes. Because if Charlie Kirk can be targeted under the bright lights of a university event, if the audience itself can become unwilling witnesses to a ritual sacrifice, then no voice is untouchable. The message is clear. Those who push too hard against the hidden order risk being silenced in the most public ways imaginable. Katt Williams knows it, Joe Rogan feels it, and the rest of us are left to piece together the fragments before the next stage of this drama unfolds. So we have to ask, what do you think this all means? Was Kirk's shocking end really the work of a lone gunman? Or was it a staged offering, written into the playbook of hidden elites? Could Rogan's hesitation be proof of compromise, or just the human reaction of someone blindsided? And most importantly, if Katt Williams truly holds the list he claims, how long before another name on it faces the same? Drop your theories below, because the more we uncover, the harder it becomes to ignore. Until next time, stay sharp, stay curious, and remember, what we are allowed to see is only half the story.